Good afternoon, everyone. All right, good afternoon. So welcome to the Court of Common Pleas General Division's Court in the Community. It's great to see so many of the familiar faces and so many new ones that are joining us today. This is actually the third stop in our Court in the Community series, and I have to tell you, it has been exciting to watch these conversations grow each and every time. We've had the opportunity to connect with residents on the south side, the west side, and today we're proud to be here on the east side of the community. East side, yes. Right. The idea behind the court in the community is really pretty simple. Too often, the only time people interact with the court system is during one of the most stressful moments in their lives. As a result, there are a lot of questions, a lot of misconceptions, and sometimes even a little uncertainty about what the courts do and why they do it. So today gives us a chance to change that. Our goal is to bring the court out of the courthouse and into the community, to make the judiciary more accessible, more understandable, and more importantly, more personal. We want you to leave here today with a better understanding of how the Court of Common Pleas General Division works, the role of our judges, what they play, and how the decisions made every day impact individuals, families, and our entire community. But this isn't just about talking to you. This is going to be a conversation. We want you to ask questions. We want you to be curious. We want you to leave with answers that help you better understand our justice system. Now, one of the best ways to build trust is through open dialogue, and that's exactly why we are here today. We are incredibly fortunate to have 6 outstanding judges with us this morning. They represent decades of experience, countless hours of service, and a shared commitment to ensuring that every person who comes before the court is treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. You'll hear about the work that they do, some of the challenges that they face, and the innovative programs that are making a real difference in our community. But more importantly, you'll have the opportunity to hear directly from them and ask the questions that you've always wanted to ask. So whether you're here because you're simply curious, because you have had experience with the court systems, or because you want to become more informed and engaged in your community, but we are glad that you are here. So thank you for spending part of your morning with us, your willingness, or part of the evening, your willingness to learn, and the questions, and be part of the conversation to help strengthen not only the courts, but our entire community. So before we get started, make sure you silence your cell phones. Make sure we have index cards. So we talked about asking questions. So we have index cards. Director Cameo has cards there, and also Director Stacy has cards also, that if you have a question, or you think you're gonna have a question, just hold your hand up to either one of them. They'll get you the card, and then make sure you write down that question. They'll get those questions to me so that I can ask those questions, right? And then, this isn't the time we understand we have 6 judges here, but it's not the time to plead your case, right? We're not here to do that, we're not also not to talk about any cases that are ongoing or in the past, because you know that we're not unable to do that in this arena here. So, is everybody ready then? We're good? Understanding? Phones are on silent? All right. So now, it is my pleasure to introduce our outstanding panel of judges. To my left, we have Judge Stephen McIntosh. After him is Judge Andrew Miller. Next to him is Judge Cheryl Munson. Next to her is Judge Chris Brown. Next to him is Karen Held Phipps. And next to her is Judge Jiza Page. Please welcome our outstanding judges. So what I want to do to start off is give all of you the opportunity to kind of hear from the judges just a little bit about themselves. If they take a couple minutes to maybe talk about how long they've been a judge and what brought them to becoming a judge. I know, but to try to keep it brief, and then we'll dig down into that a little bit later on. So we can just start to my left, Judge McIntosh.
All right, good evening, everyone. All right, my name is Stephen McIntosh. I've been on the Court of Common Pleas General Division for a little over 20 years now. I've been practicing since about 1984, and I started off in the municipal prosecutor's office, ultimately transitioned to working for a law firm here in town. At the firm, I did both civil litigation as well as criminal defense work. Then became the chief prosecutor for the city of Columbus, position I held for about 10 years before coming to the bench. And I've been, like I said, been on the bench now about a little over 20 years. And the reason that I decided to run for judge was because I had sort of reached a point in my career where I felt that I could help in a different way. And coming to the bench was one of the ways that I felt that I could do that. And as we sort of get into the things that we're able to do and that we are doing, I think you'll get a better understanding and appreciation of the types of things we as judges can do to at least have an opportunity to help people.
So I am Judge Andy Miller, not Andrew.
Oh,
Andy
sorry.
Miller. I am in my 6th year on the bench. I was elected in 2020 and assumed my responsibilities in 2021. I have been an attorney since 2001, graduating from the Ohio State University College of Law. Between then and now, I've taken a pretty winding road through the legal career. When I got to law school, I realized very quickly that what I wanted to do was be a law professor. I fell in love with law as an academic pursuit, as a philosophy, all of the nitty-gritty details of why it exists, how it's here to help us. And so I thought that's where I wanted to spend my career. So after law school, I did the thing that a would-be professor would do. I went and clerked for a couple federal judges. One down in Texas, then another out in Los Angeles. Then I came back to Columbus and worked at a firm where I practiced mostly products liability and wrongful death civil litigation around the country. I eventually got my chance to become a law professor about 2007, where I had accepted a visiting professorship at the University of Loyola in New Orleans. I went down there and I taught torts to first-year law students. I also taught evidence, American legal history, and an auspicious stint trying to teach law and education. Then from there, I went on and did another year at South Texas College of Law in Houston, where again I focused on torts and evidence. Around that time, I started to miss the actual practice of law. And my wife and I became pregnant with our first child, and she had been such a trooper letting me drag her around the country that we decided it was time to go home. And since I wasn't going to be a teacher, I decided I wanted to go into public service. And that led me to the Columbus City Attorney's Office, where I was from 2009 until I ran for this office. And essentially what brought me to this position was essentially, it's a melding of the two things I absolutely love. The law is a philosophy that helps us, and public service, which is the act of helping us. It seemed they melded the two together. That's what judges do. So it took some convincing, but I decided to run, and I think that's what we do up here, is we take this massive idea that we all just think of as the law, and we are the place where it actually turns into a practical application. And that is what I kind of find most fulfilling about this job, is it's the realization of what the law is supposed to be, and it arguably supposed to be. We try our best.
All right, thank you. Cheryl Munson. I am originally born and raised in Marion, Ohio, not too far from Columbus. I came to Columbus, I graduated as an undergraduate from The Ohio State University, and then ultimately graduated from The Ohio State University College of Law. At that time, about my 3rd year of law school, I began clerking for the Franklin County Public Defender Office. It was work that I fell in love with. I had a strong belief that everyone deserves someone to advocate and stand beside them, no matter their circumstance. I then did that work for 26 years, 5 years in municipal court, 24 years in common pleas court, where we are sitting now. And then in 2020, I did run. I never really had any really a vision of running for judge, but at that time, it was the realization that there were no former public defenders on our bench, which I think brings a unique and important perspective to the bench, and so I did run. Gratefully, I was elected in 20 to an unexpired term, ran again in 22, and now in my 6-year term, I'll be up again in 28. But it has been an absolute honor, with the exception of Judge Miller, who I ran with in 2020. I had the honor of practicing in front of every one of these judges that you see sitting here today. And so to sit here alongside of them is a great honor, and also an honor, obviously, to serve our community.
I thought you were aged out from running again. No. Hi, good evening. My name is Judge Chris Brown. I am from the south side of Columbus. I graduated from South High School. Any Bulldogs in attendance? All right. Yeah, there we go. All right. Graduated from South, went to Ohio State, and then Capitol Law School. Out of law school, I was hired by the county prosecutor's office. I spent 6 years there. 4 years I was in the special victims unit, prosecuting sex offenses, crimes against women and children. In 2012, I left to go to the defense side. I took over a practice from a guy named Scott Wiseman, a well-known defense attorney at the time. Took over his practice for a couple of years. Went there kind of with the idea that one day I might run for judge. I wanted to run for judge because, I felt like I was going to be better at it than all the judges who were on the bench at the time. No offense, Steve. Not you, everyone else. But, I wanted to run because there weren't any judges at the time, or there was maybe Steve was the only one who had both experience on the prosecution side and the defense side. And so I thought that was a unique perspective that I had that wasn't being represented on the bench. And so I ran in 2014. I was lucky enough to be elected. And so I've been on there for about 11 years now. And, I just, enjoy it the way I can, coming up from the South Side, going to South High School, seeing, the various types of inequality that existed, that really made an impression on me. That's what kind of drove me towards the law, trying to find ways to deal with those inequalities in our society. And so I thought taking the bench, becoming a judge would be a natural extension of trying to decrease those inequalities that we see in our community. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Held Phipps. I'm in my second term on the Court of Common Pleas. I have a long life story, and I'll try and make it brief, but I grew up in a very large family. I have 15 siblings in a small town in Wisconsin, and as a child, my mom and dad lined us up with our report cards, because that's how old I am. Your parents had to sign your report card. And for whatever reason, they did oldest to youngest, so I'm at the end. And as I would listen to my parents talk, I would hear how differently the boys were treated versus the girls. And I would hear my dad say, "Oh, son, you got that up to a C, good job." And then the next child would be a girl, and she'd hear, "You got an A-. What's going on? Are you not concentrating?" And so at a very young age, I noticed equality on, a 6-year-old level, and inequalities. And I thought, as I was growing up, what kind of job can you do where you can help the world be equal and you can help everybody be treated the same? And so in my juvenile mind, I thought, okay, I'm going to be a judge. That's what I'll do, as if you just choose that. And then I grew up and life got in the way, and I got married and I had kids, and I had only 2 years into my education, and then I was a single mom. And I realized I need to get my act together, and I finished up undergrad and law school when my kids started grade school, because they were in school full time. I worked nights, And then I went out on my own and practiced for 15 years. I did criminal defense, and then I came to the court. And I firmly believe that we have a really wonderful, diverse group of people on the bench that see things, and we work together and collaborate to help just better our community. And that's why we're here, because people don't realize that judges from a distance look like, oh, all they do is send people to prison and make these decisions about people's lives. And really, we all care about every human being. Or you wouldn't do this job, because it is thankless. And we just want you to know that we're out here now so you can get to know us a little better, and hopefully be a little less afraid if you have to come to court for any reason. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jiza Page, and I too am in my second term. I was elected the same year as Judge Phipps, and I am a Columbus girl. Grew up here, lived on the north side and then the east side when I was 16. And my journey to the bench actually involved a lot of you all in this room. I was an assistant city attorney assigned to Zone 2, and we worked on Motel 1, Lockwood Apartments, the hotel that was right on Groves Road. And it was there that I saw the importance of the work that lawyers do and that judges do, and how working with the community you can make changes. And that was what led me to the bench and to work with the law in a different way. So again, I was an assistant city attorney, then I was on Columbus City Council, but the work that I did alongside the area commissioners that are in this room and the really involved community people helped me see that there's more that I can do in a different position. So I would like to thank you all. I don't want to name everyone because I will forget you, but you know who you are, and I thank you for putting up with me as a young attorney who had never heard of a nuisance abatement and gave me the opportunity to figure out what that was.
All right. All right. Well, so thank you so much for letting them get to know, kind of who you are and their background. But one of the questions is, we look at the courts, and there's common pleas and there's municipal. So could one of you take the mantle on describing, the common question is, what's the difference between court of common pleas and municipal and all the different subdivisions within that? Because sometimes people get the courts mixed up. Who does what in the various courts?
Well, I think we all would give the same answer. But the municipal court deals with misdemeanors. You get a traffic ticket, if you want to contest the traffic ticket, you can go to municipal court. The violations that they have, the maximum amount of time that you can be sentenced is 180 days in jail. I'll call it simple assault, but it's not really simple assault, but it is assault, domestic violence, OVI offenses, most traffic offenses, you're driving without a valid license. Those end up in the Franklin County Municipal Court. There are 15 municipal court judges that we currently have. The general division, or the common pleas court, includes the general division, but also includes the juvenile and domestic relations court as well. Okay, there are 17 common pleas judges. We're a court of general jurisdiction, which means that we can do a variety of different things. Now, our criminal cases, the lowest offense is what's considered a felony of the 5th degree, which we can send someone to prison from 6 to 12 months, up to murder cases in which the death penalty could be on the table for one of those. The civil cases that we deal with are civil cases where the amount in controversy can be any amount. We get $1 million settlements, $1 million verdicts, and things of that sort. In municipal court, you have either small claims court or amounts in controversy that can get you up to about $15,000. The domestic relations and juvenile court is exactly what it sounds like. You're getting a divorce, you're going to the domestic relations court. Juvenile court, based upon your age, other than those juveniles that commit offenses that ultimately get their cases bound over to us. Juvenile commits a murder, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be bound over, and one of us will be dealing with that juvenile. Some offenses of violence, of aggravated robbery, or things of that sort. Again, if they find that the juveniles are not amenable in juvenile court, they end up getting bound over. And then once again, we're the ones that handle those cases. Anyone want to add anything else?
Okay. Thank you, Judge. So, one of the judges led to, when you're going into court, if I was going into court and I've never been in court, how do you work with a person that's feeling nervous? What can you, I don't know, how do you help them through this experience, through this journey through court? Is there a way that they can come talk to the judge or talk to someone, but let those who maybe have never been to court and maybe are trying to help someone to help navigate that, how can you reduce that fear, that sense of going through that process? Is there anything that you all kind of do or work with?
I'll go, and I'm sure everyone has the folks sitting next to me I know have a similar philosophy in that everybody who comes in front of us deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. And one of the reasons we come into the community is because we take our jobs as judges and the responsibility we have in affecting people's lives very seriously. And so to make those kind of decisions, you need to know where folks are coming from. And I know, and again, I won't speak for others, though I know these folks well, and I know they are the same, that, we treat people with compassion. You set the tone in your courtroom. If you're speaking to someone with respect, then generally you're going to get respect in return. It's not so much this heavy-handedness that you might see in TV or movies where judges are banging gavels and sort of throwing their weight around. At least in my courtroom, I'm setting the tone. I'm treating you with the respect you deserve to be treated, and then you're going to treat me the same. If we can have a civil, quiet, calm conversation, then usually that's what you're going to get back. There are obviously exceptions because people are very stressed, sometimes the absolute worst day of their life, and they have, they don't really know who to blame, and they're angry, and so you have to diffuse that. But I think it all begins with treating people with respect. They will treat you with respect in return. And then remember, folks, you elected us to serve you. Our courtrooms are your courtrooms. And so I absolutely always encourage folks to come down, even if you don't have a case, and see what it looks like in a courtroom. I live stream, I know many of my colleagues live stream our trials so that you can go on the court's website, see the trials happening. You don't have to come to the courthouse, but you can kind of see and get an idea of what it actually looks like, because it looks very different from the portrait that gets painted in popular media.
Real quick. One of the things that I have an opportunity to do with the Supreme Court is teaching new judges how to act in court. It's a course that we call procedural fairness, and it touches on all the things that Judge Munson mentioned about how you treat people when they come into your courtroom has an impact first on their sense of the system, because if they feel like they were treated fairly, they're going to walk out of the door, even if they don't necessarily get the result they want, but at least if they felt like they were treated fairly, then they believe that the system worked for them. So part of this is, and trying to think, I don't know, did all of you come through the course with me? I know Judge Page. Well, but you would have done so with me as well. But I think it's a recognition that the court system before that had the opportunities to be fairly cold and callous. And I agree with Judge Munson. I think my colleagues on the bench all try as best as they can to respect all the people coming in front of them, because we understand how they must feel being in court on what potentially could be one of the worst days of their lives.
I would add just quickly, come down and watch. We have open courts. That is one of the constitutional mandates. These are your courts. And I would tell you, if anybody's nervous about appearing in court, they need to come down and just sort of watch it. because if your only sense of what happens in that room is based on movies or TV, you are going to have a grossly distorted version of what you're going to expect and what's going to be expected from you. So we have open courts. We have our lot. Take a look at it, and there's nothing stopping you from coming down and watching a proceeding. I will warn you that there can be boring for a little bit. You'll have to wait for something to happen, but that is a very excellent way to become accustomed to and be prepared for if you have to make a court appearance. Go and watch a couple hours in a courtroom and see. It's designed to look a little ominous, and I think that's a purpose of order. And I think most of us here just let the courthouse do its work there. We don't need to be extra heavy-handed in what we do. But yeah, come down and watch how it happens, and I think it'll alleviate a lot of the anxiety people feel before they step in there.
And the only thing that I would add is one thing that people who don't know much about court don't think about is, as judges, there's two sides. If we're talking about a criminal case, there's the person who's in trouble, but there's also a victim. And we really balance, because often in my courtroom, if there's a young person who's in serious trouble, I understand that there's a victim's family, but I also share the same concern for them and their family. Often in court, if there's been some tragic event, I will tell everyone, this is terrible for everybody. Everybody has lost something. Everybody's losing someone, because if someone has to go to the institution because of what they've done, I just want everyone to know that it doesn't matter which side you're on. We really care about everybody. And you can come down and watch the live stream, but don't think it's going to be like TV, because it's not going to be over in an hour, and everyone isn't beautiful.
All right. Well, thank you. So kind of speaking along the lines, though, of, we talked about persons going into the court, but I also think about you as the judges. How is serving, as you all have been on the bench for a while, how is serving as a judge changed your perspective on the challenges that are facing the community? Those walking through the door, has that changed your perspective from when you started or from before to now? And if it has, how has that changed your perspective?
So yes, it has changed my perspective, because we see people who have experienced things that I'm guessing most of us have never experienced. They grow up in houses that they haven't learned things that many of us take for granted. And so while we are in a position where we have to make very serious decisions, it does change the way, and it has changed the way that I view people and my level of compassion and empathy for individuals.
I thought as a criminal defense attorney that I was able to sit down with people and talk about the worst things that's happened and help understand how they got to where they were. What has changed is when I was doing that work, I was focused on my client, and now I have to focus on everybody. And it can be challenging. There's a lot of emotion at court, and it's not our job to be emotional. And there's a lot of things happening in our community that I was well aware of for a long time. But when you see it day in and day out, you care more. And I just can't express how much we all care about our communities, or we wouldn't be doing what we're doing.
I would say for me, with my career early on, prosecuting sex cases, sex offenses, and then going to the defense side and working with people who have, done, bad things. I kind of came into it maybe a little cynical, maybe a little, jaded, thinking the worst of everybody. And one of the things that's changed on the bench is, seeing people, if I've put someone on probation and they've done, they made a mistake, they made a bad choice, seeing them grow, seeing them come back in front of me and seeing how they've developed, especially with, some of the younger offenders that we have, someone who's 18, 19, 20, your brain is still developing until 25. And you see these people as they grow and mature, they come back for maybe you'll do a check-in hearing, a miscellaneous hearing, just how's it going? What are you learning from this program? And you see them, they're growing, they're improving, they're not making the same bad choices, they've broken that pattern of thinking that led them into trouble in the first place. And that's really kind of, not to sound like the Grinch or anything, but like it's given me a better view of kind of what's possible and what, how people can grow and develop. It's, I don't think I had that on day one when I took the bench, but, you see it. I've had people come into my courtroom, they're not on probation anymore, but they'll still come back and say, hey, Judge Brown, how are you doing? And I'll catch up with them. Like, what's going on with you? I got this job, things are good. I moved in with, me and my girl got married. And, it's just like, it's very heartwarming to see those success stories. And it's made me, it's given me a lot of hope in the work that I do.
Anybody else?
I don't really have anything to add to that.
Okay. So well, that kind of leads me into the next question, because we often think of the judiciary being punishment and what have you, but not the piece where they're really working with individuals to be able to give them that second chance, give them that opportunity, work with them on the skill sets. And so it's been amazing the work that some of the specialty dockets that we have at the Court of Common Pleas. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. And those who, I guess I could start with Judge McIntosh and his specialty docket. These are, and he can also explain kind of what a specialty docket is and why it's what they are for.
Okay, the specialty docket that I have is for individuals with long-term drug addiction. Okay, the program is called TIES, Treatment is Essential to Success. And the best way that I kind of explain to you at least what a specialty docket looks like. If someone came in front of me today, pled guilty today, I sentenced them today, it would be essentially you're placed on supervision. I don't see that person until they mess up. And that, could be months. Okay, if someone's getting placed on the TIES docket, okay, when they're in phase 1 of the program, okay, I see them weekly. Okay, they're in front of me every week. We have a treatment team. The treatment team, many of the various agencies that we have in the community that they may be receiving services from, but not necessarily. But it gives me an opportunity each and every week to see how well they are progressing in their recovery. So as a judge, it gives me the opportunity, like if they're not doing the things that they should be doing, okay, what's going on here? Where are the issues? What is it that maybe we need to do differently to help you? Because please understand, which I think most of you probably do appreciate, recovery is a journey. Okay, recovery is not finishing a program and I am cured. Okay, it's a journey. And so there's a lot of tools that they need to be able to pick up. And I say it's my goal that when they successfully complete the TIES program and the person that comes into TIES and does everything that we ask them to do and do it perfectly, still is going to be in the program for about 1.5 years. Because that gives us the time that we need to hopefully, one, deal with their addiction. And that's only part of recovery. But also we'll help them with housing if they need help with housing, help them with employment. One of the things that I tell the participants in the program all the time, that we don't want you just getting a job. So many of them are just used to, I'm working under the table. I'm getting some cash here and there. And I keep telling them, okay, that's not sustainable over time. The goal is once you get finished with the program, you are self-sufficient enough, your own housing, a good paying job, that you don't fall back on those habits that you had in terms of using and getting back into the system. So the individuals that we deal with in the TIES program, most of them have been in and out of prison multiple times, in and out of programs multiple times. They get referred to the TIES program either through our probation department or through one of my colleagues. who may decide, look, I've done everything that I can on my docket. I'm trying to decide if I want to send you to prison or not, or some other outcome. Maybe ties is what you need at this point in time in the criminal justice system, as well as working with your drug addiction. So the biggest difference with the specialty dockets is the fact that they get to see a judge much more frequently. So phase 1, they see me every week. Phase 2, they see me every other week. Phases 3 and 4, they see me once a month. It's because they've reached a point now where they don't need as much structure as they need when they first get into the program. And so for those that make it through the program, and it is not easy, okay, the amount that we require of them is not easy. But for those that successfully complete the program, as I indicated, most of them are self-sufficient. You know, may not have had custody of their children. Now they have custody of their children, have a good paying job, have a place to live. And as many of them will tell me, by the time they get into phase 4, it's like, Judge, I got too much to lose now by making some of the decisions that I've made before. And just real quick, you know, one of the stories that one of the participants told me was, he said, Judge, you know, this is the first time that I had a job that I could get paid when I don't work. You know, every other job they had, if you didn't show up, you didn't get paid. But this person had stayed at this job long enough that they were getting, you know, vacation time, sick time. And this was just totally foreign to them. But yeah, through the program, able to, I got several people in phase 4 that have purchased automobiles, have bank accounts, you know, and they'll tell me, say, Judge, this adulting thing is hard, but I don't want to go back at this point in time. So, I mean, that's just a good flavor of what the TIES program is and kind of sort of what it looks like for a participant to go through.
Judge Munson, I know you have.
Right, thank you. So actually, as of just very recently, I now have 2 specialty dockets. The first docket I actually started when I took the bench in 2020, which is the RISE docket. And again, what Judge McIntosh has laid out for you is what a specialty docket looks like. And then it's you know, what are we treating within these dockets? And the RISE docket is a mental health docket for moderate to high risk offenders who are involved in the criminal justice system due to untreated mental illness. We do know, unfortunately, lack of resources in our country that, you know, we have more folks with mental health disorders in jails and prisons than in residential treatment facilities or community spaces. So this is, of course, directed toward them. The second docket that I've just gratefully approved by my colleagues is the Renew docket, and that's a reentry docket. So if you're sentenced to prison in Ohio, and it's not a mandatory prison sentence, there are timelines by which you can apply to get out early. If you get out early, you're then placed on essentially community control or probation. And if you've done well in the institution, you know, you've taken advantage of whatever programming is there, you know, you've been a decent incarcerated person, then you can apply for judicial release. And if those folks apply, and one of my colleagues grants it, then they can transfer that supervision to the new reentry docket, which again will be modeled exactly as Judge McIntosh outlined for you for his substance use docket. And one thing I want to tell people so often when we start talking about alternatives to incarceration, not just on specialty docket, but like what we do every day in sentencing in our courtrooms, is we really, people have got to keep in mind that virtually the majority of folks who are currently incarcerated are coming home. The folks who are on probation are going to be off supervision. So the question you have to ask yourselves is, how do you want them to re-enter your community? You know, you be standing in line next to them at the grocery store. Do you want them to have re-entered with support and resources and people that care about them, that let them then care about themselves and their community? or do you not? So, I mean, obviously, my opinion, and I think my colleagues, we all agree that, the human worth and dignity affords those opportunities to people, and they should. But even if you are more of an eye for an eye individual, practically you have got to understand that these folks are coming home or re-entering the community off supervision. And so we need to give them the resources they need to be successful for themselves, and so they can be successful in the community and they're not reoffending. And that's why these dockets are important, but it's the same work my colleagues are doing. We have our probation department here, incredible group of people who are invested in the success of every single probationer that they supervise, and that is a huge job. And so they're doing this work too. I'll give my brief example, and he's gonna get so sick of me calling him out, but here he is. So these gentlemen here are residents of CBCF, our community-based correction facility. They're obviously doing well because they've been allowed to come to this community event, which they should be here in the community having conversations that concern them. One of the individuals that is escorting them here today started on my RISE docket as a resident of CBCF. He came to my status review hearings in belly chains from CBCF. He now works for CBCF and brings these individuals into the community. And that is what successful specialty docket and innovative sentencing work looks like. And I think, was Judge Brown your judge? Yes, and Judge Brown. So this is how it works. Judge Brown saw in Dustin a guy who, look, he's incarcerated, he's back again, what do? I don't know what to do. Let me give him the benefit of these resources. And Dustin has said to me so many times, he's so grateful to Judge Brown for making that decision to give him that opportunity. And now he sits here, completely restored citizen, giving back to his community. So that's what it's about.
Very good. So, we've talked about some adults, but I gotta, and about those who are coming through the system, but I also wanted to touch upon those who are not in the system, but we're trying to give them direction. And so I want to talk about actually Judge Jiza Page's summer youth camp that she does every year that continues to grow and grow, but this is something that has made a large impact on our young people.
With the support of my colleagues, Judge Miller and I host the Justice for All Youth Summer Camp that is held every summer at the Ohio State University Moritz College of Law. And over the course of 1 week, we teach middle and high school students about the legal system, and it ends with them conducting a mock trial at our court. I'll leave some things for Judge Miller to talk about too. I started this in 2020. It was virtual for a few years during COVID, and parents came to me and said, can you make this an in-person experience? So again, with the support of my colleagues, I believe Judge McIntosh was the administrative judge at that time, I said, do you all think we can figure out how to host a summer camp? And with funding from the Franklin County Board of Commissioners, and a partnership with Ohio State, we were able to pull it together. It's a free opportunity. We try to make it accessible to all young people. And really the purpose is to teach them about the law so that they do not stand in front of us. And hopefully we are creating the next group of young lawyers and judges who understand the system at an early age. But also one unique thing that we did this year, which if you follow the Justice for All Summer Camp Instagram page, you will see it shortly, is that they did PSAs. So each of the students, they broke into groups of about 6 to 8 of their peers, and they picked various topics. And actually, I think 3 or 4 of the groups did teen takeovers. And so what they did is they're telling their peers about the consequences of teen takeovers. They were required to research the law, and then they came up with scenarios and what could be the possible consequences. And they did a lot of different things, from, again, teen takeovers to driving without a license. There was a group who, they're very upset with the Kia Boys because the Kia Boys have impacted their parents, and so they did their PSA on that. And it's just been it's not only fun, but a learning experience for them. And Judge Miller, if you have anything to add, he is our resident law school professor.
I'm the resident nerd. That's the thing. Yeah, it's fun. She handles all the fun stuff. I do the classroom stuff, and as you can guess, the first thing you think when you hear summer law camp. Yeah, I mean, we have some discussions. I run a class that I try to run as a Socratic method each time, and it has to change every year because we have repeats. And so if I do the same material every year, then I'm going to have some students that definitely remember the year before. But this year we had a pretty fiery discussion about the simple question of why. Why do we punish people? Why do we punish anybody for committing crimes? What is the purpose? What are we hoping to get out of it? And what's fun about this is you're taking students from middle school through high school. I'm letting them lead the conversation. It's a Socratic method where I'm asking questions to pull more information out of them. But here's the thing. There is, and I think we've all learned this in various versions when you start law school and you take crim law, you learn the fundamental 4 pillars of punishment: deterrence, rehabilitation, incapacitation, and retribution. That's been ages of Anglo-American history talking about why we do this. In the Ohio Revised Code, we actually have it established, 292911 for those of you following at home. What I liked doing with them was when they got to the final discussion, they, on their own, identified all 4 of those pillars under different names, of course. They spoke with the language they knew. But they all identified those 4 pillars. And then I showed them the revised code section to show them, you, in just an hour, have done hundreds of years of thinking that brought us to this. You've reached the same conclusions that what we would consider revered legal scholars from history came up with. This is not beyond any of them. And it's amazing to watch that light come on. So I do like to tell that story because obviously when I say I do the classroom stuff for a law school summer camp, classroom is where fun goes to die in the summer, but we still manage to make it worthwhile. And what amazing about it is we do have those return campers, the people who absolutely loved it so much that they're coming back. I got a call this morning, or my bailiff got a call this morning about someone from the camp. I have to return that call. I can't remember the name anymore, but they're very interested in coming down. Hey, Judge, can I come down and see your courtroom? Absolutely. That's what the whole point is. So I'm excited about that. But we get that kind of engagement from the kids. So whether they want to be lawyers, whether they want to be judges, whether they want to work in the criminal justice system, law enforcement, probation. I believe we've had one reoccurring camper who wants to be a forensic scientist. She always brings that up every time. So she's committed to that, but she's, I think, a third timer at this point. And so watching that create that level of excitement in that young of age for what it is that not just we do, but what the law is, and what it's supposed to be. And it's a very excellent program.
And I would just like to thank, again, many of you in this room who allowed me to come out and speak about the camp over the earlier months this year, and you encourage your young people to apply. And also Jennifer Chamberlain, not to call you out, but Timo, who is a very close young man to her, he is going to law school and wanted to work in the camp. And to have someone who will be entering their first year of law school, who can pour into young people, who's a part of this community, but who can also take this experience into law school. He was an amazing camp counselor, by the way. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a community of young people who can do the work that we do, because we will not be here forever, but who will understand that this work is very important, and it also requires a unique understanding of the community.
How many campers do we have, and how do they apply?
We have 75 young people, and the applications will be available next year. They are posted on the court's website, and then also available through social media. We just try to make sure that we spread the word.
How many applications did we have?
We had about 160 this year, which made me sad because we had a waiting list, and I don't like telling little kids no. But hopefully we can continue to expand, and as kids are graduating, we actually had a few graduates this year. We're able to bring in more students. And actually, when I was at, I believe, the Far East Area Commission meeting, there was a question on how can we expand. So and Columbus City Schools was there, and they have some ideas on what we can do to possibly have multiple camps going on at the same time.
Okay. Well, thank you all for that, and amazing program. And if you ever get a chance, and some of the stuff is on YouTube, I think. So if you ever get a chance to take a look at that, it's amazing what those young people are engaged in. So I want to stick with the classroom, Judge Miller. So the issue of bonds, right? We hear on TV that one person got $1 million bond and another person got 500,000, whatever it is. What goes into setting a bond? You know, what determines that? And then who gets the money? How does that happen?
Well, there's a lot of different questions there. So I think we start with what the bond is, what bail is. Everybody in the United States has the right to free movement. We would argue that that's probably one of our most fundamental rights ever, the right not to essentially be in a cage. You don't lose that right just because you've been charged with a crime. What happens in those situations, though, is that the state develops what's considered a compelling interest in maybe curtailing some of your movement. There may be concerns that you're a flight risk. There may be concerns that you may try to tamper or intimidate witnesses. There are safety concerns, maybe because of the nature of the crime and other background factors that literally you will be a danger. So the concept is when you get arrested, you are in custody, but everybody is entitled under the Constitution of both the United States and the state of Ohio to a bond, to be released under some kind of condition. Now, again, that's a fundamental right, and it doesn't mean it's absolute. So there are certain crimes, aggravated murder, first and second degree felonies, certain high-level OVI offenses. It's a statutory list. But there are certain offenses where the prosecution or the court can say, hey, this may be a situation where no bond should be issued at all. And in order to do that, you actually have to have a very specific hearing, almost like a mini trial. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. The standard's a little lower. Rules of evidence are relaxed. But when people go, why did he even get a bond in the first place? I read that comment every once in a while in news stories. And my immediate answer is because they're constitutionally entitled to. If you don't have that no bond hearing, you have to give a bond. Now, a bond is essentially an agreement between you and the court. You will not be held in pretrial detention. You won't be held in jail waiting for your trial if you promise to do certain things. And there's two aspects to every bond. There's the financial aspect, and then there can be non-financial aspects. I don't want to get too far into the details there, but you did ask the question of who gets the money, and that really turns on what kind of bond it is. So you'll hear recognizance bond, easiest bond to understand. No money's put down for that, so nobody gets any money really right away. What you do is you sign a promise, basically $10,000 recognizance bond. What I'm saying is if I don't show up to court, I will forfeit $10,000 to the court. So if you show up to all of your court dates, even if you're found guilty, ultimately at a trial, you never have to pay that money because you did what you promised to do. You showed up to court every day. If you don't show up to court, not only does a warrant get issued for your arrest, but you do end up forfeiting that money. And it would go to the court, and then there's statutory places where the money has to go once it's collected. The next bond you may hear about is what's called an assurance bond. And that is essentially, you don't have to put the money up front. So say you get a $100,000 assurance bond, or appearance bond is somebody gets a $100,000 appearance bond. Typically that means they got to deposit 10% with the court. And they promise if they don't show up, or whoever puts it up, usually it's a family member or the defendant themselves, if they don't show up, then they forfeit the rest. And obviously they forfeit the deposit. If they show up to every court hearing like they're supposed to, they get that money back, even if they're convicted. Because again, it was the bond between the court. It was a tether between the court and that person, a promise, and they kept their promise. The final one, again, is a surety bond, and this is where you get the bondsman. That is where you require a surety, somebody licensed to provide basically insurance that you're going to show up. They front that 10%. So it's a $100,000 surety bond. The bondsman would put up the $10,000. And if you show up to court like you're supposed to, you're never going to get that money back because you're paying the bondsman for it. That's what makes a surety bond. But that's their cost of taking the risk on the person. But you don't owe any more money. If you don't show up for court, then the bondsman or the surety becomes responsible for the entire amount, and that's where you get a financial incentive to make sure that the person shows up. So these are different degrees of bonds, and that's kind of where the money goes. But those are all financial conditions. What we can do with our bonds too is put conditions on people, things like house arrest. You have to stay in your home. We can put an ankle monitor on somebody so we know where you are. We can put restrictions on driving or use or possession of firearms. We can order you to report on a weekly basis to a pretrial probation officer. But all of these things are designed to do two things. Make sure we are protecting the state's interest in the integrity of the process, that you're not going to run, but you're going to show up to your court dates, that you're going to follow the conditions you put, and we're trying to protect public safety. So, been talking a while, and I think the biggest point I need to make, because I think the biggest misconception about bond is not punishment. Punishment in a criminal case only comes if and when there's a conviction. And a conviction only comes if and when the state proves that person's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That comes after a trial or a plea agreement. A bond arraignment is just, what do we do with this person now? To make sure the community's safe, to make sure they're going to come back, to respect even their rights. Because remember, they're not convicted, they're just accused, and they still have the right to free movement too. So that's what it is. And so I'd see too far, you see stories where somebody gets a bond and people act like, well, the court let them off. And there's no punishment here yet. There was no letting anybody off. And sometimes people ask questions like, well, what goes into it? Obviously, the severity of the crime is considered. When you are talking more serious crimes, you even look at maybe the state's evidence early on. How strong does a case look like it may be? What is the person's criminal history? When you're worried about risk of flight, do they have, they may live here in Ohio, but they have substantial ties to family in Nevada, so there's a place they could run to if they wanted to. These kinds of things all factor into it. And they all can be different. So I've had cases where somebody's accused of murder, but they are asserting a self-defense. That's their defense, that they were defending themselves. And they don't have any other criminal history. So people go, how on earth can somebody be charged with murder get a $100,000 or $150,000 bond, not $1 million? And it's because the court has no reason to believe that this person is a danger to just everybody out there. It was a particular beef, a particular set of circumstances. And if they're truly claiming self-defense, they're not going to be much of a danger to the public. And then conversely, you could have cases where somebody commits an act of violence against a random person. Well, now that person's speaking to me as a more dangerous individual. So it is very fluid. But at the end of the day, I think that's the biggest misconception. If you get one thing from this long ramble that I've given you, it's bond is not punishment. That's it.
All right, thank you. And that helps clear up a lot. And although I'm thinking about a couple more questions along that line. But so one of the questions, or one of the things that I want to talk about, and actually one of the questions in regards to young people. There is this thing I heard about the Kia boys and others that young people are kind of running wild sometimes, and they're just going in and getting out of jail, et cetera, et cetera. But a question that came in are why are the parents not being held responsible for their children about what they're doing? Is there anything coming down the pike that there's that opportunity to start holding the parents accountable? Thoughts on that, or can we have thoughts on that?
The father who provided a weapon to a school shooter, I think, got 15 years. But again, we can't, the legislature decides, what is a crime in the state of Ohio. And I think, I don't know the theory in that case, was probably some sort of reckless homicide. I'm not 100% sure. But I don't know the theory in that case. But for us to hold parents responsible, the legislature would have to enact legislation that made it a crime, quite frankly, to, in juvenile court. I think that, truancy, sometimes I know that there is something that can be affected toward the parent in that regard, but in a criminal situation, it's all legislation, and I don't know that we have any of that I'm aware of.
Promised I wouldn't talk all the time, but so the theory down in Alabama, and I think this is another interesting point, is to be careful when you watch or listen to news reporting on court proceedings, because there are plenty of good journalists out there who understand the law and legal concepts. But I think this is one of those stories, because I literally heard it when I was driving in, that the father in this particular case, this was I believe the kid was 14 years old, and he bought him an AR-15 assault rifle that he then used in a mass shooting. So that the child was bound over, and he had pled guilty. He was sentenced to life without parole. So you deal with that on your own. I'm going to talk about the father got convicted of what they call second-degree murder. My guess it is probably some kind of reckless homicide. But the way they reported it was this was the first time in the history of America where a parent has been held responsible for the criminal conduct of their child. And I really think they missed the point. I think what the father was charged with was a reckless act in giving his child a gun. He wasn't being held responsible for the murder. He was held responsible for his actions in allowing the murder to happen. So I don't think it was a special, I guess that's what I'm getting is, I don't think it was a special law created by the Alabama legislature. I think it was a creative prosecutor came with that theory. And that is what I think may set a precedent. We may see some of that, but obviously if the legislature decides to move, and I think it's another interesting thing I think that people forget is criminal law isn't common law. Nothing is against the law. Nothing is a crime unless there is a statute that says it is a crime. We don't just make up crimes. It has to be, if you say so-and-so is charged with a crime, you have to say in violation of ORC section what? Because there has to be a statute that says it's a crime. That we don't just pull them out of thin air.
Okay, thank you. Had a lot of questions that have come in, and want to ask about moving on to how do you as a judge determine a person who comes in front of you needs peer services? Does the court have a roster for peer services that they use?
With our specialty dockets, we do. On my regular docket, no. But still, and I think Judge Munson touched upon this, our probation department, the biggest difference in the 20 years that I've been on the bench is how our probation departments have changed. When I first started way back in the 80s, probation really was, okay, checking these boxes, okay, fine. If you don't check the box, okay, then I'm revoking you. But since the time that I've been on the bench, even our probation department has gotten much more into cognitive behavior. They're actually working with the individuals in their offices, giving them assignments that they need to bring in. Okay, and it's all about thinking about the things that you're doing. One of the examples that I always love to give is that I get these cases where someone is walking up to a UDF, they see a car running, no one's in the car because the owner has run into UDF. They hop into the car and they drive off. So then they end up in front of me. And I asked them, I said, well, why did you steal the car? Well, I don't know. It was there and it was running and no one was in it. Now, most of us would just go about our business. So the cognitive part is getting individuals that we see to think about why they're doing the things that they're doing. So that they walk up to the UDF, they see that there's a car sitting there with no one in, and it's running, and they walk into UDF and take care of their business. But so many of the people that we deal with, that's exactly what it is. And so our probation department works very hard. It's much more social work, really, that they're attempting to do now with the individuals that come in front of them, to provide the information and the support that they need to begin to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to stay out of the system, as opposed to many of the sort of impulsive decisions. I mean, again, the number of individuals that we see who make a snap judgment, they happen to have a gun in their hand, someone gets them upset, they pull out the gun and they shoot it, they're in front of me, upset and angry that they're looking at significant prison time because of an impulsive decision that they ended up making, whether they shouldn't have had the gun in the first place or they should have been able to step back and think before they act, is a lot of what our probation department, and I think we as judges try to work with people before they get to the point that they're shooting somebody with a weapon.
Yeah.
So I was just to kind of add on to that, in about 2016, we engaged in an overhaul of our probation department to move towards evidence-based practices. This is implementing techniques and interventions that address the probationer's needs. It's not just checking boxes. If you do these 5 things, you've successfully completed probation. It's, I believe in Dan Wunderlich, our chief probation officer, is back there. He was on this committee that I was the judicial liaison on in implementing this. But we talk now about dosage and hours and interventions when a person is struggling. Intervening at that moment, not just, hey, as long as you're showing up once a month, we don't really care what you're doing. As long as you're not being rearrested, we don't care. It's not, that's maybe how it was, a long time ago. We've moved away from that into directly addressing these, kind of like similar to like what Judge McIntosh was saying. If there's an incident like that where you make a poor choice, sit them down, talk through it. Why'd you do this? What were your other options? How has this impacted you? How has this impacted your family? Things like that, so that, we're, a lot of what my job does, it feels like sometimes like I'm a social worker. It feels like I'm a part social worker, part counselor. And so, that's the approach that we're trying to take. And I think a lot of the judges, a lot of our colleagues here take that similar approach where, we're not just having you check boxes and as long as your name doesn't come across an arrest report, we don't care. We've definitely moved away from that. And I think, you're seeing generally a reduction in crime in the last 5-6 years. And I think a lot of it is because we've changed our thinking about how we address criminal activity and how we shape people who are engaged in the system so that to decrease reoffending. And so I think we've been pretty successful at that.
I just want to say briefly, and part of the new work probation does, the work that we do, treating the individual, meeting them where they are, is also so important, because if they can't trust you to have compassion for them, and they don't really believe that you care about what happens to them, they feel like you're checking boxes and waiting for them to screw up so you can lock them up. If they feel that way, it becomes very much a self-fulfilling prophecy. And they throw up their hands, they say, this is how the system is, I can't win, do what you will with me. But if they believe that their judge cares about what happens to them, that their probation officer cares about what happens to them, that sees them as a person and an individual, then they can buy into the system. And then they can do those things and make those positive changes that are going to make them happier, and make the community safer. So philosophically, it is really about compassion and trust going both ways with the folks that we see on the criminal docket.
Yeah, and if you could, Chief Probation Officer Dan Wonderlich, if you could raise your hand, though, back there in the back. If you have questions also or want to learn a little more about what they do, he'll stick around to answer any of those questions also. So one of the questions that came in, where do you see justice-involved individuals most often fall through the cracks? And what would be an effective community partner? What would they need to do to help close that gap?
Well, the individuals that have the most difficult time being successful falls back with so many of them with housing. It is extremely hard to be successful with programming and things of that sort if you don't have a stable situation. Many folks that we deal with are unhoused, or the living situation that they have is not one that's going to be conducive to them being successful on supervision. If every day you're going home to people that are doing all of the wrong things, it really, at some level, doesn't matter what I say. They're going to be influenced by the people that they're sitting there at home each and every day. So those are the ones that tend to fall into the cracks, and I'm sure Judge Munson can touch on the population of individuals that she deals with as well, as to how they also kind of tend to fall through the cracks because of the mental illness and things of that sort.
Absolutely, mental health concerns. We've seen with substance use over last 10, 15 years, we've seen a lot of robust community involvement in treatment centers. Mental health lags behind that. Now, often, and Judge McIntosh and I and all of my colleagues experience, many of these folks have co-occurring disorders, so they have mental health issues. They're self-medicating with illicit drugs. Then you have folks that have a primary substance use disorder, and that leads to a mental health crisis. So it's a very dynamic situation, but I have got to agree with Judge McIntosh that without housing, it is so difficult to keep people, to keep them coming back. It's so easy to lose them because once they go out into the community, if you don't have contact information for them, they don't have a place to sleep at night, or they're just worried about finding a place to sleep at night. How are they going to do anything else? How are they going to meet their appointments? How are they going to maintain medication compliance? Maybe it's just easier to get high tonight and stay outside. And then I've fallen off the track. Now I may have a warrant. I'm not coming back. I have no money. I'm reoffending to eat tonight. Housing 100%. I mean, if you could imagine, not knowing where you would go if you left here tonight, not having a place where you could go, and that's the crisis. And that's community partner. I mean, we need affordable housing. We need affordable housing. And I mean, I'm not here with that solution, but I can just tell you that affordable housing, particularly with resources embedded in that housing, would be an amazing thing to have on a widespread basis.
So this is tricky because we as judges, our job is to enforce the law as written. We don't make law. We don't make policy. That is for the legislature to do. But that doesn't mean we don't have opinions. And people ask me what was the one thing that surprised me the most about when I took the bench. And I talk about the issue of substance abuse and mental health. I don't think anybody in here is surprised to hear that substance abuse and or mental health is at the root cause of a lot of the crime that we see and the people we see in front of us. What shook me was the extent to which that connection exists. If you took away behavior motivated out of a mental health issue or a substance abuse issue off my docket, you'd probably decrease it by about 80%. And so, to the extent I sound like I'm asking for policy, because the question was really how do we get community partners, and I feel like it would be a policy initiative to basically say maybe we should take some of these issues and not rely on the criminal justice system, to be, because I always think the irony of the fact that I find somebody who is in a mental health crisis or in the throes of a very serious addiction, I can't get them help until I've labeled them a felon. On the rare occasion, they'll plead down to a misdemeanor. That's nice, so it's just. But the point is, I have to now call them a criminal before I can get them help. And it's especially frustrating when the crimes are. There's really no such thing as a victimless crime. I hate that term, but I would say the more indirect societal harm, pure possession of drugs or those kinds of things. I just feel the irony of I can help and our probation officer can help, but we got to call you a criminal first. And we have things like intervention in lieu and diversion that they can help, and maybe expanding those programs. But I almost feel like there was a time where we tried or made an honest effort to take care of those folks that had mental health problems. It grew into a nightmare. Some of you all remember in the 80s when they decided to just shut all these places down because they would run horribly. Rather than fix them, they were like, well, we'll just give up on the process. I would like to see, more, again, places that we deal with this before it becomes a crime.
Yeah.
I was just going to add to one of the areas that I see where people fall through the crack is the lack of education. And one of the questions that we ask when we are taking a plea is how far is someone going in school? And I'm sure I can speak for everyone that we have a number of individuals who have not completed at least high school. And so we do have the ability through probation to require them to get their GED, but it's also understanding like the importance of getting an education. We have a number of people who have individualized education plans, and I will ask them, is it behavioral or was it learning? And so if it's behavioral, they may say various things from ADHD to oppositional defiance disorder that was diagnosed when they were in elementary school, that went untreated through middle and high school, and now we have someone who stands before us who has committed an offense and has hurt someone in the community. So how do we address that? And we have amazing partners in the community who are helping individuals acquire their GED, but I would definitely say that education is one that I see that continues to remain an issue.
Definitely. Anything else? All right. So let me ask you this, and we're going to get toward the last of the questions, but because I want to make sure we give everyone an opportunity to also visit the booths there with our resource and our justice partners, and then also have an opportunity for you to speak directly with the judges. But if you could leave the community with one message about the justice system and the work of the court, what would it be? And then if you can start.
They would pick on me. Can you ask the question one more time?
If you could leave the community with one message about the justice system and the work of the court, what would it be?
Justice system. So hopefully you have all gathered from our answers tonight that we care about the community that we serve, and we appreciate each and every one of you, and that the justice system for us is not just somewhere that we go Monday through Friday to get a check. It's a place where we go to hopefully try to impact change on the individuals who stand before us. Change looks very different. Change could be someone is being sentenced to probation. Change could be someone is going to go to prison. But we are hopeful that when they are released, when they are returned back to the community and are once again your neighbors, that they are the individuals who are contributing positively to our community as a whole.
All right.
Good answer. What I would like to say is, as we have all said repeatedly, everyone is an individual and everybody deserves respect. Just remember, we're people too, and sometimes the job takes a toll on us because we see a lot of terrible things, but every day we are striving to make everyone feel welcome. Even the people who are in trouble should feel welcome in front of me, because I want to help them. And I have had, back when I was doing criminal defense, I had numerous people say, no one has ever stood up for me. And I've had defendants who come back, I'll be like, I want to see you after CBCF. I want to see how you're doing. And they come in and they say, you know, you believed in me when I didn't believe in me. And so we just want the world to know that we're people, we are trying really hard, and if you need help, sometimes you got to ask for it because we don't know.
I guess one thing I would say, you're all here because you're interested in how the courts work and you want to know more. You know, take that with you when it comes time to, you know, we're all elected. We all, every 6 years, we go up, you know, you get to have a say on who your judges are. Study that. Take the time to figure out who they are, what their background is. You know, don't wait until your neighbor's dog bites you and then you got to go, you're suing them, and then you realize the judge was defended insurance companies for the last 20 years, and you're like, oh crap, man! Like I'm you know, you want to know about these people. On average, there's a fall off of about 30 to 35% from people who vote, you know, at the top of the ticket, you know, president, governor, senator, down to the judges. 1 in every 3 people who votes in the big races do not vote for their judges. And it's because, you know, it may take a little extra time. It may take a little extra effort to figure out, you know, what your judge or what the candidate for judge, what their experience is, what it's about, what their life experience is that they're going to bring to the bench. We all bring all of our unique experiences with us into the courtroom every day. And so you want to know about that before you're standing in front of one of us, and you know, what our background is may impact how we view your case. And so make sure you know that. You know, don't wait until, you know, something bad happens to figure out who your judge is. Learn that before and vote accordingly.
And one thing I want to say, and first of all, you know, we're all elected here. We all stand accountable for all our decisions. But it is often frustrating, and this is one of the reasons we're here, when you see, and you know, the demon of social media, you know, people commenting on, they see outcomes in the courtroom, and it's a knee-jerk reaction one way or the other. You know, this judge should be impeached, or what are they doing, or this and that. I promise you, there is nobody sitting on the bench in Franklin County that gets up and says, I'm going to make a really bad decision today. I'm going to do the wrong thing. Everybody, I think, is making decisions that they feel they can make with integrity and that allows them to sleep at night. And you may not understand that because there are 2 sides almost all the time. But I just want you to know that even if you read something or you don't understand it and you see your neighbors commenting one way or another, it's not because your judges are not making decisions that they believe are correct. We are doing what we think is right. And that's why we want to have conversations with you and give you that level of understanding. But I assure you that we do care, and that's why we're here this evening.
So one of the reasons I think the judiciary, because you all learn about the 3 branches of government, and the judiciary is probably the one folks really know the least about. Now, that's not by design, but it's not by accident. Our job, the whole reason we exist, the whole reason law exists, is to resolve disputes. So everything that happens in front of us, whether it's a criminal case, whether it's a civil case, it essentially comes down to 2 sides or more disputing something. And they're coming to us to apply the law, to apply the rules of evidence, procedure, to come up with what's the answer. So our job by nature requires us to balance all of those interests. And that's really what we do. And so no matter what we decide, somebody has an interest, a valid interest that's not going to be heard. It's going to be, or not, it'll be heard, but it's not going to prevail. And so every decision we make, to some extent there's a winner, and to some extent there's a loser. And I don't think most of us, especially when they're tough calls, especially when those interests balance so closely together, that all we're doing is making the best shot that our training and our history and sometimes just our gut tells us to make. And I think that one thing I would like to leave you with is that I don't think most of us ever go through. I mean, very rarely do we get a decision where it's, I won't even think about that twice. That was right, and I'll never. We second guess ourselves all the time because we are human. And it is all balancing of interests. And so that's really, think of it. The reason you don't hear us is because we're supposed to be neutral. We don't go out and, be bombastic online or in a pod. We see other politicians doing that. The reason judges don't is because we have to constantly remember that we are the neutral arbiter of every dispute that comes in front of us. So we need to have a temperament that says we're going to hear all of you and consider all of it. And so, for better or worse, that's very boring. Why would anybody pay attention to the person being the most reasonable person in the room and the quiet? Clearly not me. But, I would say that's probably why most folks think of the law and the justice system as this sort of, mythical, like hard to understand. There's like ongoings behind the road.
What I'd like for you to get from what we're doing and leaving tonight is, first of all, understanding that the criminal justice system is evolving, and every day we're trying to figure this out. The way things used to be done, we can't continue doing that. Folks determined a long time ago that we could not incarcerate ourselves out of this. Everyone doesn't deserve to go to prison. Now, we all send people to prison, and there are some people that absolutely deserve to be there for the crimes that they've committed. A lot of the people that we're talking about, though, are those individuals, because of situation, circumstance, or whatever, they're in front of us. Again, mental health issues, substance issues that they may have. Young kids just making stupid decisions that have significant consequences. Okay, all those people don't. Prison should not be the first place that we're sending those individuals. But for a period of time, there was the thought, and you've all heard it, the number of prisons that we have in Ohio and the level of overcrowdedness that we used to have was fairly significant, because the default in so many situations was, we're going to send them to prison. So the reason that we're here and a lot of the things that we're talking about is because the system is reevaluating the way that we used to do things and trying to figure out better and different ways to deal with people to be able to reduce crime. Franklin County, I think we're a little bit more unique than some of the other places. There's some other counties that you may not be able to have this kind of conversation with some of the judges. But I think as a whole, we're trying to make that difference. And one of the things that I talk about before I got on the bench, one of the things that I said I was going to do was visit prisons. And I said I was going to do that because I was going to be sending people to prison, and I wanted to see what prison was all about, because I wanted to give people opportunities to get out of prison early. So we get institutional reports that let us know how people are doing who request early release. And so I wanted to go to the prisons, see the programs, evaluate for myself what was going on there, and then help me kind of decide. And one of the things that we are doing is trying to get other judges. We have a program that we've been doing now with the Supreme Court for this is the 4th or 5th year. We're actually getting judges into prisons. It's a program, it's kind of fun, where we teach, we send them up to the Shawshank prison up in Mansfield. So we go through Shawshank, and then after a period of time, then we go over to Mancy, the Mansfield Correctional, where they get to talk to the people that are incarcerated. And I've had several judges say, I wish I had done this as immediately when I got on the bench. Because we want judges making decisions about, does this person really need to go to prison, as opposed to looking at that as a default. So just know, we're trying. We're not perfect, and we're not there yet. But we are looking at ourselves, evaluating ourselves, looking critically at the things that we're doing to try to figure out ways for the system to work better for the people that come in front of us.
Thank you, judges. Let me ask you, was this worth it? Learn something? Right? Definitely appreciate your time, and each one of these, they expand a little more on things when we have some time, but this is also our largest amount of judges that we've had, because you know, truly, I know many, if not all, the judges want to be out in the community and really connecting with the community to have so that they better understand each other, right? So that's why we've been doing this the last 3 times. Our next one, we're hoping to pull one off on the north side of town so that we've hit each side of town to make sure we're connecting with individuals from across Franklin County. So I'm going to leave some time. What I want to make sure that happens is that you have an opportunity to speak to the judges individually because they can hang around, but also make sure, take advantage of our partners and at the tables back there because they really have a lot to offer. And again, they are our justice partners, so we want to be able to show what they do and how they connect them with the court system. One last thing that I want to do is I want to make sure I let everybody know is those this doesn't happen on its own, but also some of the staff that you gave cards to, our Director of Human Resources, Cameo Davis is right there, our Director Stacy Worthington of Court Services. She does works the whole day on the second floor, it seems like, but does a lot there. Dan Wonderluck, who we mentioned before. Dan, where are you at behind the door? Chief Probation Officer. Also have Blaine Dirth right there in the middle. He's our Public Information Officer and Community Liaison, but also this is his last day with us. So give him a big hug before you go out, all right? And then also Lauren McGall back there. She's a probation officer back there in the back. She was checking everybody in. And I saw Ashley come in. Is she's still in? She stepped out? Okay. So it does take a team to make these things happen. And so we really enjoy coming out and working with the community. And if you do have any questions, make sure you get phone numbers and what have you. And I'm always willing to connect with you to maybe make some more connections for you if need be. So thank you once again for coming. Have a safe evening, but make sure take advantage of our resources and our judges here. Thanks so much.